Welcome to the StockManager.com studios here in the Black Hills of South Dakota. I'm your stock manager, Brian Johnson, making professional trading simple. And we did have another move up in the markets ever so slightly. Dow and S&P up about the same, about 0.25% or so. Nasdaq leading the way again, as would be expected, probably in anticipation of Intel earnings tonight, which I'm actually going to pop up on my other screen over here. And let's just see if during our conversation we get notice of any major move here in Intel. Huge move up in Intel the last few days, leading up into what? Earnings, which is typically what we see. Now, last month it was like Apple that I expected earnings to run up into, and it didn't. It actually ran down. So there are exceptions to that rule. But as a general rule, most things run up into earnings. So especially if you go back a month, you can see how Intel started way back in late December with a march upwards, kind of coming into these earnings here. We'll see if it works out or if it doesn't here, probably in the next 20 minutes or so. But I would expect that's why we saw the Nasdaq up as well as it was. The rest of the indices, you can see the Dow moving up, but you can look at these 60-minute bars here. I mean, really tiny, tiny moves. And I made a mention yesterday that we might see the volatility and the action kind of slide out of the market towards the end of the week. We might see it pick up a little bit tomorrow morning at the open only because of what we'll see in Intel and JP Morgan. But I do expect it to kind of find a common ground sometime tomorrow, maybe after the first couple hours of trading, and then kind of dwindle the rest of the day. Maybe there's a move in the last 30 minutes just as people reposition themselves coming into a 3-day weekend. Keep that in mind. It is a 3-day weekend for the trading market, so a lot of people don't necessarily want to hold over a 3-day weekend. So be careful of that as well. But look at this little tiny move in the Dow today. Let's see. A low of 10,666. Ooh. And a high of 10,723. So a 50, 60-point move maybe, which is nothing in the Dow. All day long, a total of a 60-point move is nothing to the Dow. So very little going on here, but the march is still upwards. Still upwards. Slowly, but still upwards. It did break the 10,700 level. For those of you, I said that would be my next level to watch, up and over. It did break that. You could have made a little money on that today, but very little. There really wasn't anything to play in the indices today. From a daily standpoint, we can see that it's slowly marching upwards, though, on the Dow. Once again, still kind of working its way higher. When this will break? When is always the question. We don't know. We're just going to wait for now a break of really 10,600 to start, and then obviously 10,500 below that, which I've been talking about for quite a while now. Those are the major levels to break, especially the 10,500 marker. NDX on a 60-minute, you can see it coming back up to test towards the high. Here's that big level at 1890 of resistance. Poked its head through a couple of times, not able to really do any damage to it, though, at this point. We'll see if the markets change that tonight. But waiting for a break above 1890, ultimately 1900 to really see a bigger push up in the NASDAQ, and this is what's holding it back. Check out this. I love technical analysis. Look at that. Look at that trend line holding things nicely. It hit here, held, gap below it, but got back above it by the end of the day. The next day it held. Now it gapped below it. It retests the 20-day once, twice, and comes right back up to the underside of this trend line. So working very, very nicely. Not much to trade in this as well today, just no movement whatsoever, but nice to see that it's holding below this trend line. It's obeying a lot of the technical analysis rules. So a break above 1900 is ultimately where I'm looking at a long position in the Nasdaq if you're a tech trader. From a weekly standpoint, now we're talking about something different. See how we were all the way down here, and by the end of the week, we've come all the way back up, still showing bullish behavior, putting in what could be, depends on where it closes tomorrow, but could be a potential topping candle here. We won't know until we see the close of tomorrow. But interesting to see that we were down at one point during the week, only to come back up. That is bullish behavior. If it'll hold up here one more day, bulls still in command. SPX on a 60-minute, you can see it doing the same thing as the other indices. Now the Dow managed to get to new highs. NASDAQ did not. The SPX did not. This here, you can see a high of 11. Well, it did break. I shouldn't say it didn't get to new highs. It did get to new highs. It didn't hold at new highs. I should have rephrased that. 1150.41 was the high, so it did manage to kind of stick its head just above the 1150 mark, breaking this previous high back here. Right now, at this point in time, it's just a potential double top in action. It is not a double top yet, but it is a potential double top where it has stopped for the day. Once again, waiting on JP Morgan and Intel to kind of report and give us a better idea of where we might see things in the morning. JP Morgan, more importantly, because the financials are part of the S&P 500, that will obviously affect where this opens tomorrow. And maybe it won't. How about that? JP Morgan might come out flat and maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Even if JP Morgan gaps up or gaps down, it might not make a big difference in the futures. My guess is that it will. One way or the other, it will have an effect on where we go in the morning. So, all right, moving on to the daily on the SPX. Just breaking above this resistance, holding, breaking up, coming back down, holding, and now back up to this high again. Really honest, guys, it wouldn't surprise me to see us gap up maybe a little bit tomorrow. What do we do when we can't break the overhead resistance? We just gap above it. So we might see a gap up and above it. Maybe it comes back to retest that 1150 area. If it does that, I would be watching that closely. If 1150 holds, it could turn right back around and go right back up again. So on a gap up, that would be my first strategy in the morning for you to just kind of keep an eye on. If it gaps up and then comes tumbling back down again, that's nicht sehr gut. That's not so good for the market. So you want to be watching what happens in the morning. That's just on a gap up play. On a gap down, obviously, you just want to keep those levels we've been watching. This resistance line, or this line here, which should now act as support. And then obviously the bigger line is 1130. From a weekly, once again, seeing what we saw in the other ones. Down, all the way back up again, right to this 1150 mark. So we'll see if that continues to hold into tomorrow. It's not such a big deal if it gaps above it. It's more of a big deal if it closes above it, and that's what we're watching. I will tell you to be careful about tomorrow's close and about holding over a 3-day weekend. Regardless whether you're bullish or bearish, just be very careful about holding over a 3-day weekend if you're more of an intraday player. If you've got stuff bought out for February or March, it might be a whatever, who cares? Because you've played it out for so long. But for those of you that are more intraday players, just be careful at tomorrow's close. VIX on a daily moving down ever so slightly, down 1%, but still staying within this this new kind of range that we found. Right here, still above the dotted line, but below this overhead support and overhead resistance, and above this this underneath support. Wow, I'm way ahead of myself. I got to slow down. Anything back down in here, though, is still giving the options players an opportunity to get in at a very inexpensive price. And it's still showing that there's just no fear in the markets. We've had week after week after week of fear just slowly dripping its way out of here. It looked like we might make a move here. I was really starting to get kind of bearish up in this area, and then it's just been dwindling ever since November. So we'll continue to watch the VIX and see if we can get some fear back in the markets for the bears. Apple on a 60-minute down $1.22. You can see the moves it's been making. Today was basically flat, holding right on this support level here.